We can say here now on the podcast that that is officially their next target is Tilim, and I'm sure they will hope to liberate that town as soon as possible.
Hello, and welcome to What's Happening in Myanmar, a weekly show from the Frontier Myanmar podcast family. I'm your host, Luke Corbin. It's Thursday, April 24, and this is also episode number 24. I hope you all had a pleasant and uneventful Dajan break, if you celebrate it at all. We won't be going into the earthquake again this episode. We'll save that for next week, the 1-month anniversary of that tragic disaster. Instead, today we're bringing you some discussion of the military's defeats in the wake of the quake. That's at Falam in Chin State and at Indaw, Sagaing region. We'll be joined by Lorcan Lovett, an independent journalist, and by Danseng Lawn, director of the Kachinland Research Centre. But first, let's take a quick dive into the major developments in Lashio that transpired over the weekend. So since August last year, the Myanmar National Democratic Alliance Army, or the MNDAA, has controlled the northern Shan State city of Lashio. It wrested the town from the State Administration Council, SAC, after months of fierce fighting as part of Operation 1027. The MNDAA also took over the military's Northeastern Regional Military Command headquarters. But this incredible victory was almost immediately seen by analysts as potential overreach, with Chinese pressure quickly coming to bear on the MNDAA's leadership. China also shut down border crossings on the MNDAA territory. Now, the MNDAA, of course, uses the Chinese language, Chinese currency, and relies on open Chinese borders for its operations and prosperity. In November last year, on the very first episode of this podcast, experts discussed the importance of Lashio for the military regime and for China, and forecast at the time that holding the town would be a real challenge for the MNDAA. Since then, speculation has been rife, but a Chinese brokered ceasefire between the SAC and MNDAA pointed to the latter withdrawing from the city by April 21. Well, this week, after that ceasefire has actually lasted without incident, the military is finally back in Lashio. The MNDAA has removed its flags from public places, and hundreds of cars and trucks of SAC, civil servants, police, and soldiers have entered the city since Friday, using the roads secured by the MNDAA. Chinese Special Envoy for Asian Affairs, Deng Xijun, also arrived in Lashio on Saturday, along with a 30-car convoy festooned with Chinese flags. It's thought by observers that tripartite meetings between Deng, the SAC, and the MNDAA are still ongoing on the final details of the handover, including how much of the surrounding rural areas the MNDAA will retain control over. For its part, the Chinese Foreign Ministry has publicly stated that it has installed a ceasefire monitoring team in the city. Coup leader Senior General Min Aung Hlaing hasn't travelled to Lashio, but the Democratic Voice of Burma reports that he has warned the SAC not to criticise China for its involvement in what's happening in Lashio. He described China as a, quote, benefactor at a meeting with officers in Pinolwin. Sources claim that the army will reinstate its Northeastern Regional Military Command in Lashio, and that liaison officers for the United Wa State Army and the MNDAA will exist in the town alongside a Chinese consulate. So Lashio may now be looking at a future peace, but we should remember it's still littered by remnants of war. Just this Friday afternoon, a father was killed and his 15-year-old son injured when they stepped on a landmine in the township. Many displaced residents aren't sure about whether they should or how even to return to their lives in Lashio. although the city itself hasn't been as devastated by airstrikes and fighting as many other towns that the military has lost to resistance forces since 2021. Other people only moved to Lashio when the military was defeated there, and during the MNDAA's 8-month-long administration of the city, you had former political prisoners, civil disobedience movements, public servants, and activists all involved in administrating and in community development in the town, at least according to sources close to the MNDAA. Meanwhile, conflict is continuing to rage to the south and west of the town, where the Danseng National Liberation Army, or TNLA, is trying to hold on to the territory it took during Operation 1027. These positions around Nang Cho are quite close to Pinul Win, which is a Myanmar military stronghold. The military's airstrikes on these areas are frequent and severe, and there are often accusations by the TNLA that the military uses chemical weapons there. The TNLA has faced pressure from China this year to sign a ceasefire with the military, like the MNDAA did, but it's yet to do so. In the 2 weeks since our last episode, over 100 civilians have been killed or injured by military airstrikes across Myanmar. This is during what the military refers to as a ceasefire to facilitate rehabilitation and reconstruction since the earthquake. Most of these attacks were in the dry zone, in areas where the military has diminishing control and influence. And just 2 weeks ago, the military lost another major base there at the strategic town of Indaw, at the very northern tip of Anya. So I'd like to introduce our first guest now, Director of the Kachinland Research Centre, Danseng Lawn, who's going to talk about the major resistance victory at Indaw. Hello. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Before getting started, would you like to quickly introduce the Kachinland Research Centre to our listeners?
Yes, Kachinland Research Center was founded on 21st December 2015. During the course of almost a decade, we have been doing research on different issues concerning Kachin State and Northern Shan State, particularly looking at the conflict dynamic, cross-border issues, and development issues, so on and so forth. And also, we also function as a regional think tank, addressing on the policy issues, and So you can see a very wide range of research areas that Kachinland Research Center has been engaging in as a regional research center in northern Myanmar.
Thank you for that description. And of course, Kachinland refers to something more than just what's recognized as Kachin State. Now, I want to ask about Indaw. A coalition of resistance groups took over the town of Indaw earlier this month after a long campaign. Some of the resistance forces were under the command of the National Unity Government, its People's Defence Forces, and included the All Burma Students' Democratic Front as well. Most independent media painted this as an NUG victory, but the Kachin Independence Army, the KIA, was involved as well. The KIA has been pushing against the military on multiple fronts in an operation known as 0307, named for its launch date of March 7, 2024. Since then, the KIA has taken important territory from the army and its proxy militias, including rare earth mining sites on the Chinese border, which you can hear all about on episode 3 of this podcast, and dozens of bases and outposts between Myitkyina and Bamor, where the KIA is currently at siege. The KIA has also been operating in parts of Sagaing, including around Indaw, for years. So, Danseng, what was the KIA's role in the Indaw battle?
Yes, on the ground, you can say that it is an extension of Operation 0307, started on the 7th of March last year. KIA's launched a series of offensive attacks against the SAC, and now they have been battling against SAC in Bamor. So I think the Indaw, you cannot understand Indaw in isolation. So you have to look at from a larger, strategic point of view. So meaning that the role of KIA in taking Indaw, which is located on the Mijina Shwebo Road, very strategic town, and important operations for KIA as well. So along with its allied group. So we cannot just say that this is like surely the NUG's victory. It's more than that. So it's these are like coalitions. These are like alliance. So I think NUG is a part of it, not the commanding authority, giving orders to these PDFs, student, the ABSDF, and then the KIA. So it doesn't work that way, I guess, because KIA plays a very crucial role logistically in terms of command, and then the personnel on the underground as well.
Right. You mentioned strategy, strategic location. So what are the strategic implications of Indaw being free of the SAC?
Controlling indoors provide KIA two strategic advantages. One, it can push downward, somewhat, assisting the, resistant movement against SAC in the, Sky and then Magui and this, dry zone area. So, and on the other hand, controlling indoor provides KIA to seal up, its territorial control, and then slowly it gives an opportunity to encircle, any SAC boats along Mijina Shwebo Road, and then with, inside the kitchens and this morning area. So in that way, that's provide freedom of maneuver, freedom of strategic maneuver, and then logistical, movement in those areas. So it's in that sense, it's very important. Yeah.
Will the victory affect the operations in Bamor? The KIA has been stuck for months trying to defeat the military there. And why do you think that battle's still unresolved, in your view?
I think KIA is not fully prepared for this kind of entrenched kind of, warfare. And also now they have this the tactical command center number 21 left in Bamor, but that's still very big, big areas, and then all these withdrawing, soldiers concentrated in that area, and then this urban warfare, and this the drones technologies and that kind of thing. So I think KIA is still need to adjust, these new challenges that they face.
Okay, then. Well, now that Indaw is taken, the main road from the dry zone, from Shwebo up into Myitkyina, is well and truly blocked. So how will this affect trade, and maybe starting with the lives of civilians in Myitkyina?
The seizure of Indaw, I think it won't make any more difference because the civilians are already impacted by this conflict along this, Myitkyina Mandalay Road. It has been disrupted. The flow of goods transportation by land has been a problem, since last year particularly, So, yeah, I think the civilians continue to face that. But then I think the PDF and the KIA are also trying to provide some kind of governance along that road. So they have their own checkpoints. So the situation cannot worse than before. Yeah.
And what about for the SAC?
Oh yeah, that for them that's very difficult. Definitely, shut down, their on land, by land logistical supports.
All right. Well, now let's turn to Lashio. It's been returned to military rule over this weekend, which means likely increased pressure on the TNLA's territory to the west and the southwest. wanted to ask you, the TNLA has already been ceding ground to the SAC, and with the reinstatement of the Northeast Military Command at Lashio, the prospects for the TNLA to keep the Nangzhou, etc. area, they look pretty grim. There have been tensions between the KIA and TNLA in northern Shan State since Operation 1027, and before, but more in the news recently. Do you think the TNLA will now have to buckle with a humiliating ceasefire directed by China? Will they have to come to terms with the SAC? Or do you think the KIA could help the TNLA to defend its land against SAC assaults?
That would be difficult given the situations, because a lot of provocations initiated by TNLA, and then the Kachin public has a very negative, popular perception against TNLA. In the past, TNLA proven to be not a reliable ally. So I think given that, from the KIA perspective, I think they will just try to manage the potential conflict fault line between TNLA and KIA, because they don't want to bog down in the northern Shan State when they are heavily, engaging against SAC in Kachin State. So if conflict flare up between SAC and TNLA will be on its own.
All right. Well, last question. Given the struggles in Bamor, this exchange in Lashio, the victory in Indaw, how do you see the rest of 2025 looking for Kachin independence, or maybe more specifically for the KIA?
My sense is that I think they are trying to position themselves very carefully. One, when they are heavily engaging in Bamor and trying to take over Bamor, and then they also do not want strategic isolation either, because this Northern Alliance group, especially the MNDAA and TNLA, they are ceasefire, with the SAC. So that means that SAC trying to concentrate most of its combating forces in Kachin State. So that may not be very good for KIA either. So I think probably that's the reason KIA also took over Indaw, try to see off, the SAC moving towards Kachin State, reinforcement in a way, and also provoke along the Mijinatanai area. So I think, 2025, it's still very hard to say. Probably some kind of Bali might took place between KIA and SAC, but when? So that will be the questions. Or you can see more, intensified kind of conflict broke out, So it's really complex situation here. Yeah. And if KIA could run over Bamor successfully, then I think that will be a game changer. So if they do it on 2025, then I think you will see more conflict along southward in the sense this along the Burmese dry zone, near Mandalay and that kind of thing. So that will be difficult to say. And then you also have the other geopolitical factor, the role of China. So there has been constantly forcing, KIA to negotiate with SAC and, trying to maintain peace along the Chinese border. They have been, officially closed down the border towns that the KIA took over from SAC since Operation 0307. And on the other hand, KIA also retaliate against China by, shutting down these rare minings in Chipui Bangwa area. And so that kind of things are really complex kind of situation. So the KIA is testing the water along Michina, the Nairo. These are like has a regional complications because these are connecting with India. So I think, a lot of layers and a lot of factors that we have to monitor and we have to keep track on. Yes.
Yeah, it is complicated. And of course, people often focus on China and not so much on India there. But that's all we've got time for right now. So thanks for your time, and hope to see you on the podcast again.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, Luke.
That was Danseng Lawn, director of the Kachinland Research Centre. Now, if you want more thoughts from analysts and journalists, think about becoming a Frontier Myanmar member if you're not already. You'll receive daily news with English context and analysis in your inbox, and translations of Myanmar local media and social media posts, all for a very reasonable price. But you can still check out a lot of great content on the Frontier Myanmar website for free without being a member. All our new content is listed in the show notes for this episode. Now, moving on to our next guest. As we reported in episode 23, on April 7, the Chin Brotherhood's Chin National Defence Force, or CNDF, seized the final military base holding out against their 6-month-long assault on Falam in Chin State. The Chin Brotherhood now controls the entire town. Back in February, on episode 14, independent journalist Lorcan Lovett gave us the skinny on that campaign, soon after he visited Falam. I'm happy to say that Lorcan is back with us today to update us on the military's defeat there. Hello, Lorcan.
Hi, Luke. Thanks for having me back. It's great to be back on the podcast.
How did the CNDF finally achieve victory in Falam? What broke the Sitat there?
Well, it was an unbelievable moment for the CNDF. They'd tried so hard, and their allies had, for 5 months to push these remaining junta soldiers from Falam. But any time they approached the base, they were pounded by airstrikes, and they were also targeted by artillery from the base in Calais. And, it was touch and go for a moment about whether they could actually do this. They'd lost dozens of fighters, all the civilians had left the area. But they kept on trying. They keep on coming back, trying again and again and again. And given the situation of the besieged junta soldiers, that they were cut off from water and electricity, and their morale must have been plummeting, eventually they caved in. And with one final push, the junta soldiers fled, many in chaos, down the mountain towards the valleys and Sagain and their base in Calais. Some were killed. And now it's about cleaning up the town. So now the CNDF, they took a moment to kind of, not to celebrate too much because there's a long way to go, but at least reflect on their achievement. And now the forces have come into Falam of the Chin Brotherhood Alliance, and it's all about the big cleanup. It's about clearing the landmines, the unexploded bombs, a lot of mess to clean. The CNDF, they want displaced people to return to their homes in Falam when they deem it safe enough. So they're taking the time to restore the government administrative structures, get things functioning again. And while I've been told that by the CB that there have been no airstrikes yet on Falam town since Falam was captured, unfortunately they are expected, as your listeners will probably know. The military has a pattern of targeting resistance-held towns. So understandably, people are reluctant to return right away to Falam. They're taking a step back and saying, hey, let's see how the next few weeks go.
Sounds wise to me. You mentioned the way the military soldiers bolted from the mountain. Now, reporting indicated at the time that they left many women, children, and non-combatants in the base. The CNDF, of course, already had plenty of prisoners of war, POWs. You mentioned potential airstrikes. Now, the military often targets its own POWs when it loses territory and loses bases. So what are the plans for these combatant and non-combatants that have been taken into the care of the CNDF during this long campaign and victory?
Well, for the non-combatants, so that is the wives and children of the junta soldiers, a CNDF member told me that they would take care of them, feed them, shelter them, and then try to reconnect them with their relatives in time. It's likely that the combatants, the POWs, will be taken to prison sites in remote areas, which the CNDF would not want to disclose for the reasons that you've explained. Indeed, when we were in Falam, as we were driving out, we passed a village which was bombed a few hours later because there was, I believe, about 8 POWs being sheltered in that area. So you're absolutely right. If the military find out where these sites are, there's a good chance that they will target them. So those POWs will be taken to kind of secret camps. I've been to one of them in a very remote location, and in the one that I saw, they ate the same food as the guards and the Chin resistance there. We went there for the breakfast, and it was a bit like a typical kind of almost like a canteen. They could go up for seconds, and then during the daytime, sometimes they collect firewood or do chores around the camp. But they're not shackled in the canteen or anything like that. It's going to be hard for the Chin resistance, given that they have more and more POWs to support them, to feed them and shelter them. It's a strain on resources. So that's one challenge that they'll probably need to fundraise for.
Now, something we've often discussed on this show since starting last year is the attempts at unity between the two separate resistance alliances in Chin State. That's the Kachinland Council and the Chin Brotherhood. Tensions between them have remained pretty low since their agreement earlier this year. Do you think that the Chin Brotherhood victory in Falam will affect the negotiations between the two Chin resistance alliances, negotiations on a Chinland constitution and power sharing?
Well, the Chin Brotherhood will certainly see the Falam victory as a way of gaining leverage in talks with the Chin National Front and the Chinland Council, because the more towns they control, the more resources, the more power they have, naturally, the more leverage they will have in those talks. So it does strengthen their hand. There are hopes, however, that it won't add to the tensions or the animosity between the sides. As you mentioned, back in February, they announced the formation of the Chin National Council. Another acronym to learn is the CNC, and it was designed to unify the two sides, first politically and potentially militarily down the road. So they've been working on the Chinland Constitution with 27 representatives from each side. And according to the CNDF spokesperson on the Chin Brotherhood side, no further steps have been taken recently, other than appointing those representatives. So, as everyone knows, in Chin State and in India's Mizoram, where a lot of Chin people live, this process needs to continue for long-term coordination between them. It's really crucial for the broader good of Chin communities.
Yep, and in the meantime, the CNDF now have Falam, not too far down the road from Hakka. Right, what are the strategic implications of this victory? Once they clean up the town, what's the next military priority, do you think?
Well, a Chin Brotherhood member told me that they are planning operations in Tidim town, which is not that far from Falam, and actually not that far from the India border. There's hope that taking Tidim might be slightly easier because of the experience they gained from Falam, and that this momentum could carry them over to other areas. So we can say here now on the podcast that is officially their next target is Tidim, and I'm sure they will hope to liberate that town as soon as possible. I did ask about the timing, and the response was only God knows, which is in Chin State less of a we don't know and more of a in a very deeply Christian state, suggesting that God's guidance will determine the timing.
Well, Lorcan, if we think about Tadim, we also have to think about Tonsang, right? Just nearby, just north, and actually resistance controlled. But there's a military allied militia up there, the Zomi Revolutionary Army, which has been attacking and is still attacking Tonsang with weapons supplied by the Myanmar military, apparently. So could the Zomi Revolutionary Army, ZRA, join the fight in Tadim also? Could it reinforce Tadim? Does it have the potential to become a chin-on-chin battle in Tadim?
Well, I'm not sure, because the Zomi Revolutionary Army in Tongzang seems to be at the moment more of a CNA problem or a Chin National Front problem. There's a lot of trouble in northern Chin and parts of Tidim Township where the ZRA has been attacking resistance forces. And according to the Chin National Front spokesperson, Salai Teki, the ZRA has received, as you said, weapons from the regime and could launch a big assault on Tongzang town at any moment. It's worth noting for the listeners that the Chinland Council, so the CNA, the old guard, as I say, of the area, although that's not entirely accurate, it's just an easier way to remember it. The Chinland Council Alliance, they seized Tongzang town from the ZRA and junta forces last May. And the town right now is controlled by the resistance. It's controlled by the Chinland Defense Force Tongzang, which is a member of the Chinland Council and an ally of the CNA. So the residents have fled the town and the nearby villages because of these increasing clashes between the ZRA and the Chinland Council. And they've been going on since late last year. So that's really a problem that is more for the CNA to deal with at the moment than for the Chin Brotherhood.
All right, so does attacking Tadim in the north of Chin State provide an opportunity for the Chin Brotherhood groups to collaborate with the Chinland Council militarily?
I think in an ideal world for the resistance, we would say, yes, it does. But whether that would happen or not is unclear, because the talks that they're having at the moment as part of this new CNC are purely political, and they don't seem ready to cooperate militarily at the moment. I think that takes another leap of trust that both sides are unable to achieve at this moment. So I might be wrong, but I do not imagine that the Chin Brotherhood will collaborate with the Chinland Council in Tidim Township to flush out the ZRA. I think that it will be left to the CNA, while the Chin Brotherhood focuses almost exclusively on Tidim Town itself. So that's my forecast, is that I don't see it happening at the moment, the military collaboration. I don't think we're quite there yet, but I might be wrong.
Fair enough. Now, if we zoom out a bit, we think of Chin State as a whole. There's Tadim, Thantlan. They've still got military troops there. Hakka, the state capital, it's under SAC control. And then east, in the valley, there's Gali and many Pusorti militia-controlled villages along the Myitda River going down towards Gangor. With the momentum from Falam, is this a concrete step towards the full liberation of Chin State by the Chin resistance groups? With all of this military activity still there, is a liberated Chin State conceivable?
That's one thing that both sides agree on, is that Chin State will be liberated this year. The CB says it, the CNA says it. And when we look at Myanmar overall, if there was, say, one or two states that you would pick for complete liberation from junta rule this year, it would be Chin State and Rakhine State. It just depends on how efficient the CNA can be in its military campaigns against the Hakka, which is the most formidable base for the military in Chin State. It's the capital. I've been told it has at least 700 soldiers, although that would probably increase substantially if there was an assault through reinforcements from Anyar region. And so far, the CNA has struggled with liberating Thantlan, which sadly is a town that's now been reduced to rubble because of military airstrikes. So if they can't liberate that at the moment, they're probably not quite ready for Hakka. So I think looking ahead, the TNA does need to liberate that land and then Hakka. They're major undertakings, and without the same momentum of the CB, it's unlikely the CNA will accomplish this in the immediate future. That's my opinion. However, I think later on in the year, perhaps even after the monsoon, there's a chance that Chin State could be fully liberated. It also depends on the situation outside of Chin State as well. As we know, nothing is really separated in Myanmar. If there's action happening on one other end of the country, that will affect what's happening in Chin State as well, in terms of the SAC, the junta's logistics and reinforcements. But the CNA and its allies, they've seized 5 junta outposts in the last 2 months along the Calais-Gangor road, as you were mentioning then, on the Chin-Sagaing border. So they've also got other goals outside of liberating these towns. Their goal seems to be to take full control of that road, which is strategically important because it connects Chin State and Sagaing region with the nearby Gangor township in northern Magway region.
And the road from Gangor is the road that goes to Hakka. So any reinforcements, suppliers going to Hakka would be going on that road.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. Well, thank you, Lorcan Lovett, for that great update on Chin State. Before signing off, do you want to signal any upcoming reports in your personal Substack called On Myanmar?
Yes, so the Substack On Myanmar, we are publishing every week exclusive interviews and predictions and deep dives into what's happening in Myanmar's revolution. The last one was an interview with a captured Myanmar military captain who admits to burning villages and has other sobering and startling answers. So, yeah, your listeners, please subscribe to On Myanmar and check out what we have.
Great. Thanks for highlighting that. And thanks for coming back on the show just 10 weeks after your first appearance.
Thanks, Luke.
Well, that brings this episode to its natural conclusion. Thanks for keeping up with what's happening in Myanmar. Remember, we've had a week off, so there's a bunch of new stuff on the Frontier Myanmar website waiting for you. An article about the new junta rules curbing aid to Mandalay quake victims. An opinion piece by Nini Jaw on the Myanmar resistance facing a moral quandary after the quake. And an article on US aid cuts, kneecapping Myanmar's fight against tuberculosis. Farewell, take care, and see you next week.